have you here at the 2014 National Conference on Dialogue and Deliberation, back here. My name is Susanna Haas-Lyons, and this is John Gastill, and we are your co-MCs for the conference. And we're thrilled to be back again this year. We were able to have the honor to do it in 2012 in Seattle. And our job is to help keep the plenaries fun and interesting and moving well. And your job is to dig in, participate, enjoy it, and help us know what's working and what's not. So the sound isn't working, or if the instructions are unclear, or whatever it is, John and I are here as long as all the other volunteers, and welcome to make this as responsive to your needs as possible.
Just one clarification. Think of us as kind of the Comcast of customer service. We don't actually want any negative feedback regarding us specifically. But if you do have any, there's an 800 number. It's not available at this time, but it will soon be. Over the next 3 days, we'll focus our energies on the conference theme: democracy for the next generation. The next generation may include many different visions, such as getting people to approach things in a different way, as highlighted by the Warm Cookies of the Revolution video that was welcoming you in. To tell us more about this theme and what's in store for the next 3 days, I'm going to welcome NCDD Director Sandy Heyerbacher, and I will have her kind of come up on stage whenever she would like. The introduction will now begin. Sandy was born in a small village. No, that's the 42-minute version. I've been told to edit. Actually, technically, I was told to redact it, but that's for another day. In 2000 is when I'm going to start my story. That's when Sandy and Andy Fluke, formed their official legal partnership, which was, you'll see it kind of synchronizes with this. They are very much about partnership. The National Coalition for Dialogue and Deliberation, and there's Andy if you haven't spotted him yet. And yeah, oh, just light applause, okay. All right, yeah, no, tamp it down, that's right. It only took them a couple years till in 2002, the first NCDD conference was held in Virginia, and here we are back 12 years later. Now, 12 years later, there's over 2,000, 2,100-ish members of NCDD, and it is absolutely an organization that's about its members and about their connections. What Sandy is fantastic about, what she is, I was going to say, about, is partnership, connection, connecting people's ideas, connecting people's passions. If you look around this room, and do that for just a second. I mean, you can look at us because, you know, but look around the room. That was a joke. Just really look around. I mean, you are not going to have any chance of getting to know sort of face-to-face, one-to-one all the people in this room. What you need is a network. What you need is a network that helps you find people, that helps you connect with people who share your passion. People whose ideas are different from yours, but there can be some creative, and yes, it's a real word, synergy between and among you. That's what gets Sandy excited. She loves seeing this happen. She doesn't always get the chance to literally see it, and she's taken in the room right now, and it's exciting. But it really is years and years of partnership, building up. And think about this. 2002, right, the first NCDD conference, Sandy has built NCDD with the Internet's own maturation. Social media, Facebook, these things didn't exist. She was a social network before social network was cool. So, with no further introduction, let me bring up to present to you the next portion of our program, Sandy Heyerbacher of NCDD.
That is incredible. Thank you, everybody, and welcome. We are so excited about this conference, and it is so amazing to see all of you in this room. I have to say that when Andy and I ran the first conference in 2002, we were much younger. We're not that old, of course, but it's harder, I swear, as you get a little older. So, you know, you need more sleep, and wow, it's been a lot of work, but I have a lot of people to thank. And 2002 was held in the DC area as well, so it's like we've come full circle. It feels like that to us. I wanted to say something about that warm cookies video that you guys weren't watching because you're so rowdy and so excited about connecting with each other. But we'll have you watch that another time, maybe online. But the theme, Democracy for the Next Generation, it's about having us think about what's the next generation of this work? What does that look like? And warm cookies is one of my favorite examples of people just on a local basis doing something that is really unique, really creative, really fun, going where the people are, and making their way without a whole lot of resources and just making it happen. And that's what we do in NCDD and in this community. So I want to say a couple of things about the planning process. It's a huge lift, so many moving parts, so many people involved, and collaboration at every stage of this process. If you guys remember, some of you might remember, you voted on this location versus another location in DC. So sorry for the drive if you're from DC, but it's such a cozy, nice place, I think. So you voted for that. You saw pictures of the venue. We engaged you back in April on this great tool called Co-Digital to find out what you wanted to see at the conference and what you wanted to organize. Many of you are presenting. All of our workshops this year are collaborative, so I know how much work goes into that. You've had many calls with your co-presenters and meetings, and that's a lot of work, and I really am proud of the fact that you guys are collaborating so much with each other, and the quality of the workshops is incredible. So hopefully we, Courtney and I and Polly and Andy will be able to see a couple of them at some point. But thank you so much for doing all of that. I want to also thank expanding our network and resources. Well, I want to say a little bit about NCDD. For those of you who are new, raise your hand if you're new and you've never been to an NCDD conference before. Wow. That is incredible. Okay, raise your hand if you have been to an NCDD conference before. Okay. Yay to you too. So a lot of newbies, and in case you haven't been reading my millions of emails or checking out the website with its thousands of pages, because it's overwhelming, NCDD was formed in 2002 to bring together people like you who are innovators in this work, innovators in dialogue, deliberation, group process work. I came to this field because I had an interest in race relations, and I was hired by a woman named Frances Moore LePay, who some of you know, as an intern, and she had me do 75 race dialogue interviews of race dialogue leaders across the country. And one of the things that really struck me, first of all, I fell in love with people who do this work. I just fell in love. And secondly, I learned that they didn't have connections to each other. They didn't know about each other. They didn't know about the resources that were available to them through National Issues Forums and Everyday Democracy and other organizations. And they just talked to me for about 3 hours each because they were so excited to talk to someone else who does this work. So that's the energy that you end up feeling in this room and in NCDD, is that energy of being able to connect with others who get what you do and its importance. So that's just a little about NCDD. Why, actually, I'm sorry. It was just advanced to a different part of the presentation. I'm just going to go back. That's the photo I meant to show you guys. And I want to thank our sponsors. Our sponsors and our partners are part of the reason we can charge an affordable registration fee. So I want to thank the McCourtney Institute for Democracy, which is John Gastel's organization. John's our co-MC. The Public Conversations Project, which has a whole bunch of people here. Interactivity Foundation, which has a whole lot of people here, and they were integral in the planning process. The Democracy Fund, I'm not sure if Joe Goldman is here yet. Aligned, we have Chris Hewer here in the house. Eastern Mennonite University's Center for Justice and Peace Building, which has been doing amazing work for years. The International Association of Facilitation, which is reaching out to other networks like NCDD. We're building more of a partnership with them. Everyday Democracy, which has been a long time NCDD member, a founding member, good friends. National Dialogue Network, which is the initiative that won one of the 2 Catalyst Awards in 2012. And really quick, our partners, Public Agenda, Close Up Foundation, Healthy Democracy, the Institute for Local Government, the William D. Ruckelshaus Center, MAFIN, which is the Mid-Atlantic Facilitators Network, Place Speak, the League of Extraordinary Trainers, the Annette Strauss Institute for Civic Life, and ICDD, which is the Institute for Civil Democracy and Dialogue. I might have gotten that wrong. Very similar to NCDD. But thank you so much for all of our sponsors and partners. And I have to thank also our planning team members. It has been a crazy planning team process with lots of people involved in different parts of the plenary sessions, lots of people playing many different roles, tons of phone calls, emails. I mean, you know how much work it is to plan a conference like this. So if you're involved in the planning team, would you please just stand up and be recognized for all of your hard work? Thank you, guys. In all, we have probably about 50 people involved in that. I also want to thank our board of directors. Our board has been amazing in this whole process, and we have a working board now, so we're working very closely with them. They are just so important to getting NCDD to its next level of growth. So I'd love board members to just stand up real quick and be recognized. And Courtney's in the back, and she's on the board, too. Okay, and a special thank you to Marla, because she organized our local team this year. Lots of work and made the field trips happen and brought a lot of arts to the conference and really important things that are going to make this event better. And I will speed up. I'm sorry if I'm going too long. I also want to thank our process advisors. We tried something new this year, and we had process advisors that didn't necessarily need to be on the planning team but wanted to help out, and thank you to you guys. But a special thank you to 3 people who are just integral to this conference, and you'll see all of them moving around, floating around, taking care of business. And one of them is Polly Riddims, and she's probably not in the room. She's over in registration, but she has done our logistics for all the conferences. So just that continuity makes it so much smoother. So thank Polly when you see her. Oh, yeah. They're getting her, but it's too late. And Courtney Brees, who is in the back here. Courtney is our conference manager, and we wouldn't be able to do it without her. So please. Courtney is my right-hand woman, and she's also, I'm really excited actually to announce that she is also going to be our program director for NCDD. You know that we have a small staff and we do a lot with just a few people, and so we're bringing Courtney on as a staff member. So congratulations, Courtney, and look forward to working with you more and more. And I also want to thank my husband, Andy Fluke, who's our creative director, and just point out the beautiful things that he has done, like this podium sign and the banners, and of course the beautiful guidebook, and just supporting me the whole time. Okay. Don't want to do that. So another thing I want to say is that this community raised, we didn't get money from foundations for this conference. This conference is funded by this community through registration fees, donations, sponsorships. It's all from you guys. And I want to say that we raised $15,000 just from this community to cover youth scholarships. So we have about 60 young people here. So we're very excited to have you guys, and we have a mentorship program designed for them. And a special kudos goes out to Roshan Bliss, who's over there, who's been organizing all this stuff and doing all kinds of great work. Okay, I must move on. Okay, thank you. So I want to say that this community has a lot of big visions for the future, a lot of high ambitions for this work. Over the next 3 days, we want to see if we can create a shared vision for the future of our field. The theme for the conference is, as you know, democracy for the next generation, and democracy has different meaning than most people think of it in our community. You know, we're not necessarily talking about a form of government or influencing those in power. We're talking about equipping people to solve their own problems. We're talking about equipping people to create the future that they want to see. That's what we mean by democracy. Of course, we talk about the other stuff as well. But, and by the next generation, you know, we are talking about youth, and that's why we really did a lot of extra effort to get young people here. But we're also talking about technology. What's the next generation of this work look like? How do we integrate technology? We're talking about things like the Warm Cookies video that takes the Warm Cookies of the Revolution in Denver takes a different approach to this work, and we want to learn from these new approaches. You know, how can we add fun and game elements and things that people want to have at meetings, like warm cookies and milk? And we're also looking at, you know, the fact that our government in many ways is broken. So how do we fix that? What does the next generation of democracy look like? The people in this room are part of that solution. Now, I've had this slide up for a while. So back in April, we engaged our community around the question of what would you like to see happen at the NCDD conference in the fall. And we had a lot of activity. It was really fun activity. We learned a lot from what you guys told us. And one of the things that one of our planning team members did was figured out what are the actual barriers that were pointed out in this engagement exercise. You know, people wanted to have workshops on different barriers to engagement, barriers to dialogue and deliberation. So we came up with 4 broad categories. And this is important because in tomorrow's plenary, one of the things you're going to be doing is having table discussions on these different barriers. And the room will be set up in 4 quadrants, but you'll be able to propose specific topics around these 4 barriers. And the first barrier is lack of trust in our democracy, our leaders, in one another. As you know, citizens don't have a lot of trust in government right now. You know, politicians don't have a lot of trust that citizens are capable of having the kind of input that they need to make good decisions. So there's a mutual mistrust. Citizens don't necessarily trust each other, you know, increased polarization. The second barrier category is unequal access. This is our inclusion category. Lots of inclusion issues. Not everybody has equal access to dialogue and deliberation or to government. Language that we use in the field isn't always welcoming to people who aren't involved or aren't already the usual suspects and bought into this work. The third barrier, and this will all be posted outside, and then you can choose if you want to lead a table discussion on something around any of these barriers. The third one is lack of cohesion as a clearly delineated field with all points in communication. So as you know, there's lots of areas of practice without a clear demarcation between them. So there's organization development, deliberative democracy, community development, dispute resolution, and of course we have a lot of jargon around these different things, but we don't have clarity on, you know, how are these different fields working together, how do we name this work, how do we make it more accessible, and there's of course a lot of turf issues and things like that as well. And then the fourth category, and I would just say that because of this lack of cohesion, our community struggles to throw our collective weight around because we're in these different segments in our field, and that's really important for this conference when we're looking at how can we work together, how can we make a difference together. So the fourth one is about structural barriers. We have antiquated laws for decision making. We have formats that just don't work anymore, like town hall meetings. Of course, we have a lack of civic infrastructure. We focused our last conference on that topic. A lack of funding that's available in the field. We all are concerned about that. And so what are those infrastructure questions? And that's the fourth category. So please think about those and look outside later on for a way to to actually propose topics around that. And we have some leaders in the field who are already preset to talk about 4 of those. Now, I wanted to say just a little bit, hold on a second. I have to speed up. So I wanted to say a little bit about the mapping process. Right now, you're going to go into a table mapping, the kind of networking process, which is what the crayons and pens and everything are for. In our field, we're competing. We have multiple methods that we're competing with each other for attention around. Of course, many people are consultants, and naturally, you're competing for the same space or the same funders. But at the same time, we have to collaborate in order to reach those big visions that we have for this work. So we've been seeing more collaboration happening, through projects like creating community solutions that we and others have been working on for, almost 2 years, I think now, and many other really exciting projects that you're going to hear about in workshops and in plenaries. So but at the same time, we're still struggling to figure out who we are as a field. Oh, and I forgot to do this slide on the barriers. There's the 4 barriers if you want to look over those real quick. Sorry about that. So we're still struggling to figure out who we are as a field. I mentioned some of the challenges that we face around demarcation of these different fields of practice. And we're trying to figure out how we can combine forces. NCDD provides a way for you to connect with each other, and sometimes we're able to combine forces for different purposes, but how do we do that better, and what would motivate you to be able to do that? So one of the things that we did leading up to the NCDD conference is we worked with someone named Catherine Thompson, who couldn't make it because she's very ill. But she conducted 10 interviews of leading organizations in the field that are highly collaborative. And you'll see the results of those interviews. We worked with 10 graphic recorders to create these maps that are around the room, and I hope you take the time to really look at them. Here's one, so you can see it on the big screen. But what we asked people basically is, first of all, what's at the heart of what you do? Why do you do this work? What is it that you're trying to do? What is the change you seek to make in the world? And then we asked them, so who do you work with most? Who do you have to partner with in order to make those changes happen? Because they are all partnering with all kinds of people. So we want to map that out. We want to understand that. And then asking also about who do you want to partner with in the future? So aren't these beautiful? Let's just say these maps are just the neatest thing, and many of our graphic recorders are going to be here at the conference too. I know I'm pretty much out of time, so I'm figuring out what I can still say. So one of the things that Catherine noticed from all of her interviews, a question that seemed to be coming up over and over in different forms with increasing urgency is, who are we? Individually, we know the work that we do, and why you do it, how you do it. You might also understand the work that others do and why they do it. But if we are united at some deeper level by some sense of the possibility of positive change in the world through healthier democratic processes, deliberation, dialogue, deep facilitation of ideas, values, hopes, and dreams, through community meetings that enable real people to address real problems together successfully, then perhaps we can uncover the deeper why that defines us as a we, not a gathering of discrete organizations, each doing their collaborative work. So at this point, I'm going to transition over to Susanna Haas-Lyons, who's going to lead us in the collaborative mapping exercise. I hope you guys have fun with it. It's about seeing who the connections are, getting you just starting to think about how you might connect with more people here at the conference and why. So thank you, and we'll move over to Susanna.
Thanks so much, Sandy. And if Stephanie Brown's in the room, come on up, because you're part of this too. I'll just say one thing about these maps. They're extraordinary because they graphically represent some of the conversations and reflections that we often don't have time in our lives to make happen. And so we're going to be doing a little bit of that in a minute. But before we get going, I'm actually going to lead you let's see. Well, you know what? Actually, one thing, before we delve into the exercise, it'd be useful to have a little bit of time to introduce yourselves at the tables, whether you've had a chance to do that or not. So we'll pause for a minute. What I'm going to ask you to do, and these instructions will probably sound quite familiar to you, share your name, your organization, university, or other affiliation you have, and where you're from. So those three things: name, affiliation, and where you're from. Before I send you off to do that, if you've already had a chance to do that, or if you have extra time, talk a little bit about what brought you here. And for some of us, it's a good opportunity to actually check in and say, oh yeah, what am I doing here? What's my purpose? For other of those, it's a great way to kind of start making connections. You'll have really just about a minute a person, so not a ton of time, so please be brief. Name, affiliation, where you're from. Go ahead. And this is the time to introduce the graphic recorders too. Great. All right. 15 seconds. Okay, I invite you to finish your statement and then let your conversation end. Great, okay. So by now, hopefully you've had a chance to finish your statement and you've all gotten a chance to meet each other at the tables. And I invite your attention back up to the front. Great. So this is Stephanie Brown. She is our lead graphic recorder for the conference, and she's going to talk a little bit about the exercise and also the role of graphic recorders during the conference.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. So welcome to the Creativity Hive. So I think what you see here now is only going to continue to increase and expand, because in this room we're going to continue to post up all the different recordings that people do in the workshop sessions. So I just want to share just a little bit around the three different components, and I'll do this quickly, the three different components that the graphic recording team has been engaged in. We actually have 18 graphic recorders from across the North America even that have... Isn't that great? That have been a part of this process. And this process has been going on actually for several months now. With the mapping that Catherine has, the interviews that she hosted, many of the graphic recorders were actually on the calls listening and talking with those individuals and organizations as well to take that information and then start to craft in studio these maps that you see around the room. We have just a couple of the graphic recorders with us today that I think Tamara is here, Tamara Carhart, in the back, who created one of the maps, myself, and then I think that's it for people that are in the room with us. Most of these folks... Oh, Greg is doing one today. He has not done the graphic recording map beforehand. Okay, so, and then that's the other part. So we also have graphic recorders that are going to be in all of these major sessions with you. And I just want to point out Greg Gersh over here. It's just an incredible pleasure even for myself to watch what Greg is doing. He is really a leader in this area in DC for graphic recording, so this is just a real treat for us all. But you're going to get a real treat with everybody that's here on the team. I want to introduce the rest of the team that we have with us today. We are going to actually have different teams throughout the course of the weekend, more people that will be coming in to support. So today, if all the graphic recorders that are with us today could stand up. I have Greg Gersh here in the front of the room, Mark Korsak, Tamara Carhart, Frankie Aberland, Stephanie Plunkett. And then I want to give a special thanks to Philip and Carol Bakler, I keep stumbling on those, who will also be graphic recording, but who really helped to pull together and make all of this possible in terms of all this work. So thank you very much to this team. And one of the things you'll notice that we actually have a mix of pros and students as a part of the team. So this is an opportunity for people to come in and grow their capabilities. And it's through the support of people like yourself that many of us have been able to grow as facilitators. And I'm just going to give a special call out for myself to Peggy Holman, who I just love and really trusted in me very early on. So thank you. Okay, so jumping into this, I want to describe just a bit of what you're about to do and give you a few tips for your own graphic recording that you're about to embark on. So this is just a very sort of simple image that describes or might be an idea of what you're going to do at your table. You're going to be collecting and sharing from your heart that change that you seek, the organizations that are in your circle today, and then in the triangles, those which are the organizations that you wish to connect with. And you're going to get a lot more information on that. But I want to call out that you'll note that you'll see the name, you'll see the organization, and you'll see the location around where people are coming from so that we can look at these maps later and gain a little bit more information from there. You'll also note that there are some solid lines, and that is connecting from my heart of purpose to other organizations that I am actively working with today. The dotted lines are ones that maybe I heard just around the table that I'm going, wow, I want to connect with them. This is a really great opportunity. Or I have a weak connection and I want to grow that. And I'm advancing. I don't went too fast. So a couple of tips for you at your table. Use dark colors. Do not use yellow to write with. You know what? Nobody can see it. That goes for any flip chart work that you're doing as well. Please don't use yellow. Write boldly, and by boldly, oftentimes this means writing with all caps, because you know what? We can read that a whole lot better. For some reason, we can read words that are written in all caps, even when we scratch them out. Write words and then draw the box around it. That is just one quick little tip, and that way they'll all sort of fit in there. And be creative and have some fun. This is really going to be a great time. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over.
That's great. I love this list. It's, particularly number 3 is so instructive. Write the words and then put the box around it. How many of us have gotten, oh, I ran out of room. So thanks so much for giving us those tips. Okay, so here we're going to do 2 rounds, and we're calling it a mapping cafe. So many of you have experienced a World Cafe before. Using that style, we're going to do, you see your small intimate discussion tables, but our activity is really focused on the paper in front of us, which World Cafes often do as well. So in the first round, what you're going to do is individually write your answers to the following 3 questions, and then draw the corresponding shape around your answer. So the first question is around your heart, your purpose. What is the change I seek to make in the world through my work? And this is a great exercise, because this is elevator pitches of elevator pitches, because you have to do a phrase. You can't write a paragraph. You don't have enough time or space. So after you've had a chance to do that, you'll write your name and your organization beside it. And then you start to create a little mini ecosystem of your own work world, just on the map in front of you. You'll start to brainstorm which are the specific individuals or organizations that you collaborate or partner with most closely in your work. And so while libraries may be yes, but say the Montgomery County Library, or say the National Issues Forum, if that's who you're working with, or whichever organization or individuals, even if people won't know who they are, it's useful for us to pull out those particular relationships, because what we're trying to do here is get a sense of who are we? And can we make connections between this particular network of people in the room and organizations? Can we make those connections visible? Because once they're visible, then we can learn more about ourselves at the table and ourselves as a network. And we're going to be posting up the work that you're doing around the conference so people can check out the work that you've been doing. And don't use this as an excuse to feel like, oh, I can't draw, I can't do this, because you can definitely do hearts, circles, and triangles. I know you can. So then the third question is, the change symbol is the triangle. Who would I like to partner with? And this might just be one person, it might be a couple people. So once you've got those down, then as a group, you'll work together, you'll talk with each other to share your answers, and use the lines to start to show the relationships. And you saw Stephanie's example, where there's dotted lines to show relationships that maybe are to come, solid lines for relationships that exist. Maybe it's a twirly, twisty line, because boy, it's a little complicated. So use that, and feel free while you're talking to reach over and say, hey, my purpose connects with yours, and make a line. So that's going to be your first round. I'm going to explain the second round as well, so when we transition to round 2, you can just jump right into it, and I'll move the slides accordingly. So that's your first round. In your second round, like a World Cafe, we're asking one person to stay behind, just to give a little bit of an overview briefly to what happened in the previous round. And that doesn't mean walking them through every detail, but if you're the person that stays behind, what do you notice? What stands out to you? What was interesting about the conversation? Just a few highlights to help people ground. Then we're asking the new folks to add your heart and your purpose. We're not going to recreate all 3 questions, but just kind of locate yourself there. Then use the crayons to draw stars to show your connections and interests. So maybe someone's purpose you really connect with, or maybe draw connections between things that maybe haven't already been done. And have fun with it. These are not sacred. Make them your own. Interact with them. And if you have time, discuss as a table what surprises, provokes, and inspires you. How can we make this visible map a useful tool for understanding who we are and the work we're wanting to do? So any kinds of questions of clarification or reflections on the process? Yes, please speak loud. So the question was, are you creating your own small map in front of you, or are you trying to integrate them all with one another? Do what makes most sense to you is the deep answer. And then if you're wondering what I would do, just do the map in front of you of your ecosystem, and then you connect ecosystems with one another. And also something to point out is, while it's one heart, you can do as many circles or triangles as you like. Okay, one last question. Go ahead. Great. So this is, that question was about, can I just keep your attention for a moment? How long do we have? Which reminds me of what I said to my husband before I left here for the conference, which was, I don't know about you, but when I go to events, most of the time I'm sitting there going, oh my God, are they really going to do that from the front of the room? And couldn't they get the process a little clearer? And so facilitating for a group of facilitators is about as much of a difficult place that you can stand. So please be patient with me when you see the places that you might do it differently. We have about 20 minutes for the first task and about 15 for the second. I'll give you a 3-minute warning each time. And then when I stop the group, I encourage you to please just drop your conversation where it's at and move to a new table. Which, just to clarify, in round 2, one person stays behind. Everybody else distributes to new table to meet new folks. Okay? Great. All right, off you go to round 1. Have fun.
Yeah, the fact is NIF is also all these intro people into the city.
Still here.
So now we put our, now there's this tiny space right here.
That was
really interesting. Oh, I'm so glad. It's going to be in 5 cities, Minneapolis.
Okay. There's big fans of this activity. My hand is up. If you can hear me, raise your hand. If you can hear me, raise your hand. Great. So, lots of fans of this activity in the room. Awesome. Amazing. I walked around and just heard snippets of conversation, was blown away by the beauty of the diagrams on the tables, knowing that some of you arrived to the second round finding almost no space to put your hearts down. And just how inspiring, fabulous. I want to hear just maybe 2 or 3, depending on how much time we have, comments about that question that we seated at your table. So first, from somebody who's never been to NCDD before. What surprised, provoked, or inspired you? And we have microphones in the room. Runners with microphones, put your hands up, please. At the back, great. Okay, somebody who's never been to NCDD before. What surprised, provoked, inspired you? Right there, great. Microphone, please, to the woman in orange. And if you just tell us your name, that'd be great.
My name is Claire Collins, and what I'm very happy to be here, but what's inspired me is the interconnectivity of ideas. We all come from different backgrounds, but yet there is commonality.
Wonderful, totally. Okay, somebody who's been to NCDD maybe twice before. Or more, 2 or more times. Are there any of those folks in the room? Somebody there? Great. Please stand up and say your name.
Nancy Glockernike. What didn't surprise me was how much in alignment, how much resonance there was between us and how many things we had to say to each other. What is really inspiring, but this is always true at NCDD, is how often we work in relative isolation within our particular fields, locales, and then to be here and realize the connections, not only geographically and in terms of our interests, but what a wide spread of fields, places this is happening.
Thank you so much. Okay, one last comment. Now, do we have more than one mic in the room, or just, yes, okay, so someone from this side of the room. Anyone? Okay, go
Hi,
ahead.
this is Debbie Lynn Molyneux, and I'm here wearing 3 hats this weekend. So it's really great to put the activism along with the facilitation and the process all together in one place. What is inspiring to me is that I've been to 2 tables now. I've talked with 10 new friends, and I have 10 new connections of ways that the work that I do can help and be connected with everything else that's happening in the room. And then I look around the room and I go, oh my gosh, there's only 400 more people. So thank you for that.
Thanks so much. Okay, so the good news is we have an infrastructure to try to help to continue this networking connection. Dog and Pony DC is a wonderful theater company based here in the Washington area, and they're going to be leading half of our session tomorrow, plus doing one of the field trips in the afternoon. Outside in the hallway, there is a bulletin board of classified ads that they are helping to run, where you can pick up a classified saying, I'm looking for this, or I want to meet this person, or if you were one of those folks that has already arranged something in advance, flip that card over and say, meet us in the lobby tomorrow morning for this conversation. And use that bulletin board to connect, because 400 is a lot of people, but this is one way that you can find continued synergies with each other. I want to let you know what's going to happen next. So we're going to hear from David Matthews, who's going to share some thoughts with us. And the maps themselves are going to be picked up at lunchtime, and they're going to be posted around our space here for the next few days. And the graphic recording team is going to use them as inspiration, as modes of informing a larger field map that they're going to be creating. And so what we did here today, plus what's happened so far, plus some other input is going to be used to create a field map. I encourage you to go up to them as they're doing this and share your observations and the things that stood out to you from this exercise. And then we'll be able to get a sense of the larger interconnected system that we're all a part of and your own points of intersection with that system. So the last thing I'd like to say before I invite Sandy up to introduce our next speaker is that I want you just to have one moment just quietly thinking to yourself. Set an intention for what's one organization or an individual that you plan to connect with at the conference. So reflect on that. Who do you plan to connect with while you're here, making use of this time? Got it? Yeah? Great. Okay, Sandy, I'd like to invite you up.
All right, everybody. It is my pleasure and honor to be able to introduce Kettering Foundation President David Matthews. This is his first NCDD conference. And I just want to talk a little bit about David, because he probably won't talk very much about himself and all his accomplishments, but under David's leadership, the Kettering Foundation actually plays a vital role in our field by advancing and funding leading-edge democracy research. Because one of the key ways Kettering conducts research is through in-person learning exchanges, Kettering also serves an important convening role in the field. As many of you know, NCDD has been collaborating with Kettering more and more in the past couple of years, and we're thrilled to be doing it. The maps that you see around you in this room are part of a field mapping project that we're doing in collaboration with Kettering. So David actually has done extraordinary work, obviously with Kettering, but even before Kettering, most notably serving as Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare during the Ford administration. So, big deal. He's a big deal. I'm proud to be able to introduce him. Many of you have taken David and Kettering up on their offer of a free copy of The Ecology of Democracy. We've been telling you about that, and I hope you're enjoying that book. It's a fabulous book. So please join me in giving David a warm welcome.
I appreciate being here. That's not simply a rhetorical device. I do appreciate being here, and I'm going to tell you why before I leave. But first, the bad news. I'm with the Kettering Foundation. We are a research organization. We do not give grants. We do not fund anybody to do anything. If you suddenly discover that you need to be somewhere else, I will understand. I always feel like I have to say that in the spirit of honesty, full disclosure. We study democracy. That's what our research is about. And the way we study it, we're not academics. We're recovering academics in some cases, but we're not academics. We started by inventors. And what we do is exchange what we've learned from past experiences and observing for a record of what people are doing now. And we have an exchange with NCDD that is very productive for us, and I hope useful for you. Now, the first thing that I was asked to talk about was Washington, since the meeting is here, and I had the honor of spending a time in the federal government. In 1953, in the Eisenhower administration, a lot of independent agencies were brought together. Food and Drug Administration, Social Security system, all of those into one single agency, was at its height with a budget that was larger than the budget of all but two countries, the United States and Soviet Russia. It wasn't just a large organization, it was gargantuan. It was the Godzilla of government organizations. And it was very pervasive, some would say invasive. If you got up in the morning and opened your medicine chest, you would meet HEW in the form of the agency that regulated drugs. When you sat down to breakfast, you would meet HEW again in the form of the agency that was responsible for seeing that the food that you ate was safe. If you went to school, the school was probably funded to a large extent by some grant from HEW. If you had a scholarship, it came from the student loan division of HEW. If you went to bed, when you went to bed, there in your bedroom was HEW again with information on the most intimate details of life. It was not simply large, it was pervasive. It was also constantly controversial. You saw that this morning when you got up and read the news with Ebola. What's the agency that is responsible? Well, it is that part of HEW that's now called Health and Human Services. I've forgotten the number of suits that have been filed against me. I looked them up the other day. I think it's down to 161. So the controversy made it very litigious, and the litigation was often over regulations. The department can issue regulations that have the force of law, but they do not have to go through the open process of debate and deliberation that we require of our laws. Okay? So that led to, and still leads to, all kinds of litigation. I saw a story just before I came on pedophiles. There is a regulation in Section 504 of some law that I've long forgotten the name of that very properly protects people with disabilities. But the people who have been convicted as pedophiles are now claiming that they are entitled not only to safe passage, but actual protection from the federal government, because pedophilia, they argue, is a disability. So it was very controversial. And yet at the same time, it's the agency that is responsible for acting on the compassion of the American people, and it was an honor to serve it. But despite its size and pervasiveness, when you're in an agency like that, you're only going to be able to hear three voices by and large. It's though you were sealed in some kind of virus-protecting suit, and only three voices can get in. You can hear the voices of politicians, of elected officials, and you should. You can hear the voice of experts. The people who work in the federal government are not bumbling bureaucrats. By and large, they are very skilled professionals, and you will hear their voice, and you should. And you will hear the voice of those groups that represent a particular interest, special interest, and you should. What you will not hear is a public voice. You will not hear a public voice. Now let me explain what I mean by that. I don't mean some consensus arising from the masses of people, as in the people speak. I don't mean the voice of a majority in a poll. When I talk about a public voice, I'm talking about the voice of a struggle. The voice of people struggling with the tensions that are inherent in every decision that we can make, whether it's about solving a local problem or whether it's about enacting a policy. The tensions. And a public voice is the voice of that struggle, okay? But even though it's about tensions, the tone of that voice is different from the other voices. A public voice is by and large practical, pragmatic, and not ideological. It is an essential voice in governing, but largely it's absent. There are things that a public voice can convey that no other voice can. I'll give you 3 examples. A public voice tells us what is deeply valuable to people. When people talk as citizens to one another, they reach down beyond the facts and the beliefs and the ideologies to their most basic motivations as social beings. We have social drives like those that Maslow discovered when he talked about our need for food and shelter, okay? So when I say things valuable, I don't mean values. My friend Harding Carter said, I know what values are. They're the part of the Bible written in red. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about our survival instincts that people will come back to time and time again when they make a decision. Is this going to make me free? Am I going to be treated fairly? Am I going to be secure? So a public voice can tell you what is valuable. A public voice can also tell you what the options are that grow out of the many things that we hold valuable. And they're never just 2 of them. There'll be 3 or 4 because there are many things that are valuable to us. And third, and this is most important in government, a public voice can tell you what people will and won't do when push comes to shove. There is no decision that we can make on any issue that is not going to involve some trade-offs, that's not going to cost us something. And for all that we know about what people want and what people like, the reality in government is that you have to understand what people will do when push comes to shove. Now, if you don't have those things, if you don't know what's valuable, you're not going to engage people. They engage around what is valuable to them. And when we say people are apathetic, they're just indifferent to what we want them to be concerned about. They're not apathetic. The only apathetic people are dead. They're in the cemetery. Everybody's deeply concerned about their security, about their freedom, about being treated fairly, and all the other things that they care about. And unless those are identified, people are not going to be engaged. Unless we know the full range of options that we might consider, that we ought to consider, then we're going to narrow down to the usual 2 and we're going to be polarized, and that's going to lock up the system. So we need to know that. And if we don't know what people will do when push comes to shove, we don't know what's politically permissible. We don't know the range of things that we can and we can't do. For example, I remember some forums on censorship. People are not favorable to censorship. On the other hand, when you talk about what comes in over a television set or one of these screens to young people, they have some reservations. And they can, if they struggle with making that choice, they can tell you how far they will and won't go to control what comes into their living room. And you really have to know that to govern. So where do you find a public voice? Where do you hear it? It's not the trained voice of an opera singer. It's a voice we hear elements of every day in every place. My wife was having some surgery done to remove a cataract on her eye, so I spent a lot of time sitting in waiting rooms. Heard a public voice. People were weighing, I've forgotten what the issue was, but they were sitting there and they were weighing their options against what was valuable to them. It happens in waiting rooms, it happens in bars, it happens around water coolers, it happens in long lines in the grocery store. It's all around us. So why is it unavailable? It's unavailable because we don't recognize it for what it is. It sounds so ordinary and so everyday. We dismiss it. You can hear anything you want if you go out there. We don't recognize it. I was trying to think of a way to explain that, and I got to thinking about the area where I grew up, which is on the Gulf Coast, southern Gulf Coast. The rivers in my state, Alabama, flow together right before you get to Mobile into the Gulf, and they create the muddiest, swampiest, god-awful area you've ever seen. It runs for miles all the way up. It's full of amazing creatures. The record this year for the largest alligator was 15 feet long and over 1,000 pounds. You do not want to meet that creature. Full of snakes. Stinks. So developers came in and they said, look, this will be nice. We'll just put some dirt and cover up all this mud and build these nice condos. And the folks that were trying to get the ships into the port of Mobile saw these big piles of sand out there, and they thought, well, we'll just dredge them out. So they took out the Barry Islands all the way from Mobile to New Orleans. But then the hurricanes came, and what do you know? They came up exactly the same paths for the ships, and the barrier islands weren't there. And the people who made their living fishing realized that the fish were not there anymore. The shrimp were gone, the oysters. Why? Because all of that swampy land was actually the breeding ground for life. Life stopped there, but we didn't recognize the importance of it because it looked so ordinary and, in fact, not very useful. And that's true with public voice. All of the elements are there. It's natural. Human beings are deciding beings. Our brains are raised that way. But I don't use all of my natural faculties, and you don't either. So a public voice can be nurtured. It can be nurtured. And that's where I come to the part of my remarks that has to do with you. Do you realize how remarkable you are? One of my colleagues, Holworth, calls you the talking tribes. I understand that's offensive, and I don't mean to offend you. But never before in American history, as far as I know, have we had all of the talking tribes in the range and diversity that we have now, nor have we had them together in rooms like this. When we were facing very controversial issues at HEW in the 70s. Our Ebola was a flu virus that in 1918 had killed millions of people worldwide. Fortunately, it didn't appear. Our controversies were school integration, race relations, just as controversial. But there was not any group like this that we could talk to. You are remarkable in the history of the country. And the timing couldn't be more significant. In our research, what people tell us is that they've lost confidence in the large institutions, including those in government. They don't think the system can reform itself. They see no signs of it. So they come to the only conclusion they can: it's up to us. But they don't know what to do, and they aren't sure they can do it, and they aren't sure that there is any voice that they can bring together to bear on the political system. And that's where you come in. You have an incredible opportunity, if what you produce, however you produce it, is in fact the public voice that's missing. These opportunities are rare. They don't come often in our history. And that's why I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. Will the talking tribes seize the moment? I don't know. I don't know. It's up to you. Thank you.
Just in case he was a little too in the moment to hear that, how about one more round of applause, David? Thank you again for sharing your experiences and reflections from both the Kettering Foundation and obviously from experiences even predating that. As this first plenary session draws to a close, we'd like to share some information about some of the opportunities you'll have during the conference and information you'll need for the rest of today's schedule. Sandy, why don't you come on up here to talk briefly about one of the opportunities, the media room. Come on up.
All right, in case you didn't see my announcements about this, I'm very excited about this. We have Keith Harrington, who's our videographer, who's here today, and his colleague. And Keith is set up in what we're calling the media room, which is right around the corner from registration, or the registration area, right in front of that. And we also have a photographer here, John Daly, professional photographer who's going around taking photos of everything. But these guys are going to be set up in the media room and ready to take headshots, professional headshots of you guys with nice lighting, to take really quick videos of you talking about your work, things that you can share on social media, you can share on your website. I just think it's great for our field. It'll bump up our visibility and give you guys something of real value that you can use. And of course, if you do go in the media room, we might also have Keith ask you some questions about NCDD, maybe some other questions, but mostly this is for you, a free service for you guys. And can I mention the food, or are you going to mention that? So two things. Right next to this ballroom is another ballroom called the Regency Ballroom. And there's actually a little error in your guidebook. Tonight's showcase is in the Regency Ballroom. It says ballroom, okay? This is the regular ballroom. So the showcase is over there. We're not going to move all the tables and craziness like we had to in Seattle. So it's over there, but also your lunch is going to be over there in a second, and so you'll just move over there and you'll get lunch and you'll come back here and eat in this room, okay?
Hi. For those who don't know me, I'm a social scientist very concerned with measurement. There's a very simple operational definition of insanity. If you don't go to the media room and take advantage of that opportunity, that's a pretty one-to-one, solid, high reliability indicator that you are insane, because that is a tremendous opportunity, and it's something people complain in this broad field and community all the time, is that we don't take time to make a good video. We don't even have a good picture of ourselves. We don't, come on, it's sitting right there. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. All right, Susan Clark and Diane Miller, come on up here. Sandy's going to say something, but you guys just get on up.
Thanks, John. I just forgot to mention that there's going to be a sign-up sheet right outside of the media room, so you can sign up for specific time slots. It's a very important piece of information for you. Thanks, Nancy.
Oh, it's a delight to be here. I have been at every single NCDD conference since 2002, and I'm Susan Clark. I'm the California Susan Clark. Where's the Vermont Susan Clark? She wrote a great book called Slow Democracy. You must read it. She proposed differentiating us by saying that she's the one who likes dark chocolate. I like dark chocolate. Just if you see someone named Susan Clark, give them dark chocolate and no one will get embarrassed. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Diane Miller. I'm also on the NCDD board. I'm actually in Austin, Texas, and I think I've been all but one of NCDD's conferences, and it's so great to see you all here.
Well, what we briefly want to do, standing in that precarious place between you and lunch, is to just let you appreciate a little bit more about the extraordinary way that NCDD has evolved and how much the membership has played a role and how we're at an inflection point as an organization, and you can be a part of that. So if you're new to NCDD, you can see that we've got up here, it's an amazing resource at the website of the latest breaking happenings in the field and parts of the field that you can't keep on top of because there's so many pieces to it. Thousands of pages on the Resource Center and this amazing network. And who are all these people? How can you stay connected with them after the conference? David Matthews talked about being inventors. And earlier Sandy talked about how we're all innovators. And the way that she and Andy and the very small core group has built NCD over time is how we talk about innovation in California. So I'm in Northern California, and you kind of hear all about the innovation. But way early on, Sandy figured out about being open source. So we talk about how there are only 2,000 members, but there's 30,000 people in the network. People are not like gate-kept in and out. So it's open source. All the major decisions have been generated by input from the membership, from the network. So it's very customer-centric in the jargon. And we crowdsource ideas. She's just done this amazing thing of what's called lean prototyping, iterating, revising. As you can see, we won't go into detail, but the number of resources and what's being offered in the programming is extraordinary from a really tiny little team. So NCDD is a volunteer organization. I would say it's completely volunteer. There's a very small paid staff, but if we actually did the analysis of how much time has been given above and beyond, you probably don't want to see that number. But anyway, the few paid staff are donating their time, and I am just delighted. I think I got this little part here because I'm one of the newest board members, and the rest of this board has been working extraordinarily. They do put the work in working board, but why do we do this? And so many other volunteers, so many people in the room do so many things for this organization. One, because we gain as much as we give. And now at this inflection point, we're reorganizing ourselves into some work groups. And so in your packet, in your purple bag, you will see this very attractive, we don't spend a lot of money on marketing materials here, so this nice, plain, simple, low-cost invitation to you to join the Membership and Programs Work Group, which Diane's going to talk about, or join Marla Crockett and Martine Carcassonne for the Outreach and Communications Work Group, or join our board chair Barb Simonetti and John Backman on the growth and sustainability, or you can help Sandy and Roshan with the blog and adding to the Resource Center. So please look at this flyer, think about what you want to do. When and how we're meeting is going to be out on the classified board. And as John just said, you'd be crazy not to participate in the free media things. We think you would be really selling yourself short if you didn't take advantage of this chance to contribute. And since we are on the Membership and Program Committee and we're up here, we have an opportunity to make a special pitch about how at the dues paying level, we've got a little over 2,000 members, but we've got that network of over 30,000. And we've got big ambitions. Again, this is about spreading the field of D&D, but think of how if we strengthen NCDD and its capacity, it can support more of the new democracy that we want. And in the spirit of big ambitions, my colleague Diane is from Texas, and we think big there, and she has got a theme for us.
So I have to admit, I'm not a Texan, but I got there as quick as I could. So when Susan and I were talking about this opportunity to talk with you all, we wanted to come up with some kind of concept. And so we thought about wranglers, about democracy wranglers, right? How can we get more folks to help us kind of rustle up people's interest and awareness, really, of what this work is and what it means and the impact it's having across the country. What I find in the work I'm doing in Austin is people don't even know about that there's this whole field. Literally, they don't have a clue that there's these people out there. And once they open that box, like NCDD is like a gift. It's like, wow, this is unbelievable. Look at everything that's in here. But one of our struggles is talking about it without the jargon, talking about it in a way that makes sense. So we thought what we'd really like to do, part of the thing, first of all, as Susan mentioned, we've got a lot of folks that are members or aware of or involved in NCDD, but really aren't dues-paying members. And we really need the support and help, and we think it's an amazing way to contribute to the field. It's actually a big benefit to you, all of the things that you get as a member. So we're talking about how do we renew or upgrade our current membership. At the bottom of the slide, there's membership levels. It's currently still only $50, although we're looking at rate increases. We're going to try to put a big push toward election day. So we're going to really want to, in the next few weeks, really encourage folks to join NCDD. And those that are involved in NCDD but aren't dues-paying members, join us. And there's organizational level, there's student level, so you see all that information there. But we also want some help this weekend, since we're all in the room. We want some help actually messaging how we talk about NCDD. So what we want to do is invite folks tonight to the showcase. So we'll be next door and we'll have a showcase booth. And we need help, kind of how do you talk about this work to your family or your friends? What do you say when you talk about the work that you do? How do you talk about it to your colleagues? Is it different in your business settings? How do you explain this work? So we're going to be gathering your input both tonight at the showcase, and we want to have a special lunch with you all. We want to gather at a table tomorrow. So we want some democracy wranglers visible with our purple bandanas. We've got some bandanas for you all. And we'd love to kind of recruit you into this conversation and get your brain power on this topic of how do we get the word out about NCDD. So we really are looking to make this a big push before Election Day because people are frustrated and want to have a different kind of conversation in their communities. And we think this work, the work you all do, and that the network supports is really an important way to give people inspiration that, wow, a different way of doing democracy is possible, and it's actually happening. So that's it. That's all we've got. I'm not sure who's next, honest to say. John? Thanks, folks.
So please join us.
I'm sure we have many National Public Radio listeners. You have to admit that is the shortest percentage of membership drive that you will hear ever in an hour when it is the time of season for such things. But I can't stress it enough. Again, you're appreciating all the people and connections you're making in this room. That is not just because a lot of cool people wanted to show up. It's because this network exists. And the network exists because of membership. So if you haven't yet joined, by all means do so. And if you know others who should join, it really should be one of the core kind of identity memberships for you that you sustain year after year. Enough of that. So what else is happening today? You may want to take a look at the schedule in your guidebook. I know some of us are kind of attending by the seat of our pants. So if you're like, gosh, I wonder what's next. This is so exciting. Just a couple words to help get you grounded. We'll be heading to lunch in a few moments, followed by the short talks, which is a new thing this year, which consists of 2 rounds of 20-minute talks. And this was devised to really give you more opportunities to learn about more things and to let kind of more things into the program. They'll be in breakout rooms, and the details are listed in the guidebook. There'll be signs to help you find your way, but the breakouts are on this floor right here, and the rooms have signs showing what's in the room. Doesn't that make sense? A brief note about tomorrow. We'll be starting the day with workshops and breakouts at 9 o'clock in the morning. So look over the listings in the guidebook and determine where you want to go. And thank you for your patience with these details. The buffet will be located in the Regency Ballroom, which is right next door. So go ahead and get your food, and then come on back here, sit down, enjoy, have yourself some lunch. Let's do that. All right.